The morning sun poured through my window, warm and steady, as though it had been waiting to greet me. I sat up slowly, my diary still on the desk. The ink from last night's tears dried into permanent stains. I stood, wrapped my shawl around my shoulders, and walked into the small courtyard. The air smelled of wet earth and flowers that had bloomed overnight. Birds sang freely in the branches above, their songs unbothered by silence or sorrow. I tilted my face to the sky and whispered, "Yesterday, I was forgotten. Yesterday, I was erased. But today, I am still here." I sat on the wooden chair in the courtyard, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to breathe without waiting for anyone to knock at my door. I realized then, dignity does not come from cakes or candles, from songs or parties. It comes from knowing who you are, even when the world pretends not to see you. I am a mother, a woman who gave everything and asked for nothing. My value is not measured by who remembers my birthday, is measured by the lives I built, the love I poured, the strength I carried. If you believe every mother deserves respect, press like and comment respect below. Let no birthday pass with a mother forgotten. I want to say this to every child who might hear me. One day, you may find yourself standing at your mother's empty doorway. You may wonder why the room feels cold, why her chair sits vacant, why her voice no longer calls for you. And then, you will remember she once waited for you. She once hoped for you. She once gave you every piece of herself, even when she had nothing left. Do not wait until the chair is empty. Do not wait until the diary is closed. Do not wait until the grave carries the silence you created. See her now. Honor her now. Celebrate her now. I rose slowly and walked back inside. On the table sat the empty plate where the biscuits had been, the dustbin where the stale cake lay discarded. They no longer mattered. I opened my diary again and wrote one last line. Better to sit alone with dignity than to sit among many without respect. I underlined it twice, closed the book, and placed it carefully in the drawer. The house was quiet, but the silence was no longer cruel. It was mine. I whispered softly, "Happy birthday to me." And this time, the words felt whole. That evening, when the last of the voices faded and the courtyard next door grew quiet, I sat by the small desk in my room. The house was still, carrying only the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the ache in my chest. I pulled out an old diary from the drawer. Its pages yellowed and edges curled. It had been years since I last wrote in it. My hands trembled as I opened to a blank page, but the words spilled anyway, heavy, aching, unstoppable. Today was my birthday, I wrote slowly, but no one celebrated me. My children sang for another. My grandchildren clapped for another. They gave me crumbs, and called it kindness. They told me I was too old to sit with them, too odd to be seen. On the day I brought them into the world, they erased me from theirs. Tears blurred the ink, but I did not stop. I wrote about the cakes I had baked, the balloons I had tied, the sleepless nights I had endured to make their birthdays shine brighter. I wrote of their laughter, their joy, the way their eyes once lit up because of me, and then I wrote the truth of today. Now their eyes no longer see me. Now their joy is louder when I am not there. Now their voices sing louder without my name. I closed the diary, pressed it to my chest, and whispered, "At least these pages remember me. At least here, I cannot be erased." I sat back in the chair, the night air drifting in from the window. The moonlight spread across the floor, cool and quiet, as though the heavens themselves had come to comfort me. For the first time that day, I felt seen, not by my children, not by the family I had raised, but by the sky, the earth, the silent witness of life itself. If you believe mothers should never be erased from their children's lives, please share this story. Let every forgotten mother's voice be heard. I whispered into the stillness, as though speaking to the generations who might listen. You may forget me in your photographs, in your parties, in your feasts, but you cannot forget the nights I stayed awake for you. You cannot erase the hands that fed you, the feet that carried you, the prayers that guarded you while you slept. Even if you pretend I was never there, life itself remembers me. I thought the diary would be the end of my story, a quiet page to hold my pain. But the next morning, I discovered a final truth, and it was not sorrow, it was strength. The morning light slipped through my curtains, pale and unforgiving. My room still smelled faintly of melted wax and stale frosting. On the table sat the untouched slice of cake, the broken candle leaning sideways. Its wax hardened into silence. I had not eaten it. I had not even touched it after the flame had died. It sat there like a reminder, not of joy, but of how easily a mother can be forgotten. Through the open window, I heard voices from my daughter's house. Relatives were still lingering, sipping tea and praising the night before. What a wonderful party. One auntie gushed. So much food, so much laughter. Truly, the best birthday celebration. Another voice chimed in. Yes, the decorations were beautiful. The bride looked like a queen. They thought of everything. Everything. I sat on my bed, my hands folded in my lap. Everything except me. Not a single voice mentioned my name. Not one word about the fact that the day had been mine, too. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the wall. Memories washed over me. I remembered birthdays long past when neighbors praised my efforts. They would say, "What a thoughtful mother. Look how she makes something out of nothing." They saw me then not as old. Not as a burden, but as a mother who gave her all. Now I was invisible, erased from my own day, as though my very existence had been an inconvenience. I rose slowly. Walking to the table where the stale slice of cake still sat, I picked it up, carried it to the kitchen, and placed it in the dustbin. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady when I whispered, "I am not a guest in my own life. I am not someone to be fed with scraps. I will not eat what was never offered with love." If this moment touched your heart, please comment respect below. Let every mother know she still matters. I stepped outside into the small courtyard of my home. The morning sun warmed my face. The birds chirped, and for the first time in days, I breathed deeply. The world outside had not forgotten me. The earth still greeted me. The sky still watched over me. The air still carried my breath. My children might have erased me from their party, but life itself had not erased me. I whispered, even if they do not remember me, I will remember myself. But as the laughter of the guests next door carried on, I felt another truth settle heavily in my chest. Sometimes, the cruelest wound is not in being insulted, but in being ignored. The night grew heavy. The music faded little by little, until only the clinking of dishes and muffled chatter lingered in the air. I sat on my bed, sari still neatly pinned, though no one had cared to notice. The biscuits on the plate had gone stale. The candle had melted to nothing but hardened wax. At last, I heard footsteps outside my door. My heart leaped. They remembered. At last, they remembered me. The door creaked open, and my daughter stepped in. She smiled faintly, a plate in her hand. On it sat a small slice of cake, the frosting smudged, the candle already broken. "Here, Ma," she said softly. "We saved you some." I stared at the plate. Saved me some. Not baked for me, not lit for me, not shared with me, just saved me a piece. Like one saves scraps after a feast. I looked at her, my eyes trembling with tears. "Did you forget what today is?" She hesitated, then looked away. "Ma, you know how it is. We couldn't celebrate 2 birthdays at once. It would confuse people. 2 birthdays. Mine, erased. Hers, exalted. I picked up the plate with trembling hands. The cake was dry, the cream already hardened. I whispered, "When you were small, I used to give you the first piece, not the last. I lit candles for you even when I had no money for oil. I clapped for you, sang for you, prayed for you." My daughter bit her lip, her eyes darting away. "Ma, don't make this difficult. Please just eat." But my throat closed. The cake in my hand felt heavier than stone. If you believe no mother should be given leftovers on her own birthday, please like this video and share it with others. Let the world know mothers deserve better. I set the plate down gently on the table. "I am not hungry," I said softly. Her brows furrowed. "Ma, don't be stubborn. You should eat something." I shook my head. "I will not eat what was never meant for me. Dignity does not live in crumbs." She sighed, muttered something under her breath, and left the room. The door closed, the footsteps faded, and I was alone again, alone with a slice of cake I could not swallow. I stared at it for a long time. The candle was broken, but I lifted it anyway and placed it upright in the stale frosting. My hands shook as I struck a match and lit it. The flame flickered weakly, just as it had in the candle I had burned earlier. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Happy birthday to me." The words cracked as they left my lips, but they were mine. Mine alone, and as the flame burned down, I thought, better a lonely flame lit in truth than 100 candles burning in betrayal. I thought the leftover cake was the cruelest wound, but the morning after would teach me one more truth. I closed the gate gently behind me and walked back toward my room. My steps were slow, each one heavier than the last, as though the gravel itself tried to pull me down. The music from my daughter's courtyard grew louder, echoing over the wall, seeping into every corner of my small home. I sat on my bed, the biscuits from the morning still untouched on the plate. I lifted one, but my hand shook so badly it slipped and broke in two. A small piece fell to the floor, and I watched it crumble. as though even the biscuit refused to stay whole for me today. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes, but there was no escaping the sound. Laughter roared. Children squealed. A voice shouted, "Bring more cake." And above it all, someone started singing "Happy Birthday" again, louder this time. With claps and cheers, I pressed my hands to my ears, whispering, "They will come for me. They must. They cannot leave me alone like this." But the hours passed, and no one came. I lit a small candle for myself. Its flame flickered weakly, fighting against the noise that seeped in from outside. I stared at it, remembering all the birthdays I had made special for my children. I remembered my son's 5th birthday when I had borrowed money from a neighbor just to buy a small cake. His eyes had lit up as though I had given him the world. He had kissed my cheek and said, "Ma, you're the best." I remembered my daughter's 12th birthday when I had stayed up all night sewing her a new frock from leftover fabric. She had twirled in it, proud as a princess, while I clapped with tired hands. I remembered how I had stood in the kitchen, sweating over pots and pans, while everyone else sang and laughed, always making sure they had joy, even if my body carried only exhaustion. And now, on my day, they carried joy without me. If this moment touched you, please subscribe. Let's give a voice to every mother left alone on her birthday. The music grew softer for a while, and I thought perhaps they were done. I rose and peeked from my window. They were still eating, still laughing, still clapping. Plates of sweets, trays of biryani, bottles of soda, everything I once struggled to provide, now laid out in abundance. But none of it was meant for me. I sank back onto my bed and clutched my pillow, whispering into the fabric, "It is my birthday too. I am still here. Why can't they see me?" The candle beside me flickered lower, the wax dripping onto the plate. I watched the flame fight until it was nothing but smoke. And I thought to myself, maybe that was me still burning, still hoping, but shrinking until only smoke remained. Outside, the voices rose again in cheer. Someone shouted, "Best birthday ever." And I sat in silence, knowing that for me, it was the worst. I thought being told I was too old was the deepest cut, but the night still had one more cruelty in store for me. I sat for a long while in my room, the laughter from next door pressing against my walls like waves against a fragile boat. Each burst of cheer reminded me I was not inside it, that the celebration was happening with my children, but without their mother. At last, I told myself, no, it must be a mistake. They cannot be so cruel. Perhaps they are waiting for me. Perhaps they have hidden the surprise. I rose again, smoothed my sari, and stepped outside. My sandals scraped against the gravel as I walked slowly toward my daughter's house. The gate was open now, guests walking in with bright smiles and gifts. I stood at the threshold, clutching the edge of my shawl, and whispered, "This is my home too. They will welcome me." Inside, the air was thick with the smell of sweets and the hum of music. Children ran across the courtyard, balloons tied to their wrists. My daughter-in-law stood near the cake, beaming as guests congratulated her. I stepped forward, my eyes searching for my son. When he saw me, his smile faltered for a moment. Then he walked toward me quickly, his hand raised not in welcome, but in warning. "Ma," he said softly, but firmly, "not now." I blinked. "Not now, but it is my birthday." His face tightened, his voice low so others wouldn't hear. "We know, Ma, but today, we are celebrating her. Please understand. You're old now. People won't understand if you come and sit here. It will look strange, strange." The word hit harder than a slap. I tried to speak, but my daughter walked up then, her arm linked with her husband's. She smiled politely, though her eyes avoided mine. "Ma, please don't make a scene. Just go home and rest. We will come to you later." "Later," I repeated, my voice trembling. "You will come to me later, on my birthday." They both turned back to the guests without answering. If this moment broke your heart, please like this video. No mother should be told she is too old to sit at her own celebration. I stood there, my feet rooted to the ground, while guests walked past me carrying trays of sweets and laughter. No one stopped to ask who I was. No one guessed that I was the mother of the man hosting the celebration. A little girl ran by, her balloon string brushing against my arm. She looked up at me with curious eyes and asked, "Auntie, why are you standing outside?" Auntie, not mother, not grandmother, not birthday girl, just a stranger. I stepped back slowly, out of the courtyard, my heart heavy. My hands trembled as I clutched the small corner of my shawl. From my doorway, I looked once more at the party. My son laughed as he fed his wife a piece of cake. My grandchildren clapped and shouted. Guests cheered and sang. And I was left outside the gate, invisible, unwanted. told I was too old to join. I thought standing outside would be the end of my pain. But worse was waiting for me still. The music from next door grew louder as the morning wore on. It wasn't the faint kind of music one plays for themselves. It was the kind that announces something to the world. The kind that says, "There is a celebration here." I pressed my ear closer to the window. I could hear laughter, the clinking of plates, and even the faint chant of happy birthday. My heart leaped. I pressed my palms together and whispered, "They remembered. They remembered." I reached for my shawl, straightened my sari, and carefully pinned it. I smoothed my hair one last time, checking the mirror, smiling at the thought of my children waiting to surprise me. But as I turned to leave my room, I froze. A thought struck me like a shadow crossing the sun. Why were the sounds coming from my daughter's house, and not from mine? I told myself, no, it must be a gathering spot. They'll come for me. They wouldn't celebrate without me. I stepped out of my door and walked slowly toward my daughter's gate. The voices grew clearer, children squealing, women laughing, someone calling out for more sweets, and then I heard it. "Happy birthday," followed by claps, cheers, and the sound of a cake being cut. My steps faltered. My heart thumped in my chest. I whispered to myself, yes, they must be waiting for me inside. They must be saving the final moment for me. But as I reached the gate, I saw them through the bars. There stood my son, my daughter, their spouses, my grandchildren all gathered around a cake glowing with candles. My daughter-in-law leaned in, cutting the cake with her husband, smiling wide as everyone cheered, and in that moment, I realized the truth. It wasn't my birthday they were celebrating, it was hers. I stood frozen at the gate, my hands gripping the cold iron bars. My heart sank as I watched them feed her the first bite of cake, the room echoing with laughter. My grandchildren clapped, their little hands covered in icing. My son kissed his wife's cheek, saying, "She deserves the best today. The best today, my birthday." If this broke your heart, please share this video. Too many mothers are forgotten on the very days they should be honored. I stepped back from the gate. My breath caught in my throat. I whispered, maybe they just forgot the date. Maybe they didn't realize it was today. But deep down, I knew the truth. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen. And the choice was not me. I returned to my room, the laughter still drifting over the wall, like salt rubbed into an open wound. I sat on my bed, staring at the small plate of biscuits I had prepared for myself that morning. I touched them gently, whispering, "I had thought you would eat with me today, but I ate alone." I thought the sound of their party was the deepest wound, but worse was waiting. The morning of my birthday began with sunlight spilling gently across my room. I sat up slowly, feeling the familiar ache in my knees, but my heart was light. Today was my day, not for gifts, not for grand celebrations, but for something far more precious. I hoped for company, a kind word, a warm hug. I smoothed the wrinkles of my old shawl and tied my gray hair into a neat bun. From the small cupboard, I pulled out a pale blue sari. It was nothing fancy, but it was the one I had worn years ago on my husband's last birthday. I thought to myself, he would have wanted me to look nice today. On my bedside table, I placed a small plate with 2 biscuits and lit a match to warm a cup of tea. I whispered softly, "Happy birthday, Ma," as though my own mother could hear me from the other side of time. The house was unusually quiet. No footsteps in the corridor, no voices calling, no one knocking at my door. Still, I told myself, they must be busy. Perhaps they are planning something, maybe a surprise. I held on to that thought as I sipped my tea. Each swallow flavored with hope. My mind wandered back through years of birthdays. When my son was small, I would spend days saving coins just to buy him a balloon and a sweet. His laughter would fill the house, brighter than any candle. For my daughter, I learned to bake a simple cake in the old stove, even when sugar was scarce. I would pretend I wasn't hungry so they could have bigger slices. Back then, birthdays weren't about me, they were about them. Every year, I gave them joy even if it meant I went without. And I never regretted it, because that is what mothers do. We turn our hunger into their feast, our silence into their laughter. Now on this day that was meant to be mine, I waited for their footsteps. I imagined them walking in with a small cake, perhaps just a candle, perhaps even nothing but a hug. I imagined my son saying, "Ma, without you, there would be no us." I smiled at the thought, clutching the edge of my sari, my heart swelling with pride. But as the minutes ticked into hours, the silence of the house grew louder than drums. If you believe no mother should be left alone on her birthday, please subscribe. Let's make sure these stories are never forgotten. I stood by the window, looking out into the street. That's when I heard laughter. Music, the clatter of dishes. It drifted not from my house but from next door, where my daughter lived. My heart jumped. Ah, so that is where they are. Perhaps they are preparing. Perhaps they will come to fetch me soon. I pressed my palm against the glass, smiling faintly. Yes, they are planning something for me. I must be patient. I thought the silence in my house was only the calm before joy. But I was wrong.